As if conference realignment wasn't already crazy enough, reports were released, I believe 2 days ago. Yes, 2 days ago, that the Big 12 and Pac-12 are meeting to discuss a potential merger between the two. I'm reading this article from Yahoo Sports by Brianna Dix, and before I even get into this, I just want to say that this is very interesting because about a decade ago, there were talks about a Pac-16 super conference, and the Pac-16 super conference would have added Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Colorado from the Big 12. And in the end, only Colorado came over, and they added Utah from the Mountain West to make the Pac-12. And Texas is largely to blame for the Pac-16 not forming. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But for now, let's just get into this Yahoo Sports article. So, since the official announcement of the Oklahoma Sooners and Texas Longhorns joining the SEC in 2025, narratives have circulated on the remaining programs in the Big 12. Conference realignment has been a hot topic since the announcement of OU and Texas's pending move to the SEC, and it gained traction on Tuesday. The teams left in the Big 12 could potentially merge with the Pac-12 conference or form a scheduling alliance, according to the Athletics' Max Olson. He confirmed that Big 12 Commissioner Bob Bowlsby and Pac-12 Commissioner George Kilevkov will have a formal meeting to discuss an agreement between the two parties in the aftermath of recent events. The goal is to combine resources and innovation to reach an agreement on a future relationship between both conferences. A possible merger is on the table. And in all honesty, I mean, a merger would somewhat, I'd say, make sense. The Pac, and this ties in directly to what happened with the Pac-16 a decade ago. The Pac-16, in theory, would have already had a good amount of the schools that are already in, or that were in the Big 12. I mean, Texas Tech, Texas, Oklahoma, OSU. I mean, OU and Texas are obviously in the SEC, but you could add Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. I could see Baylor, TCU. Iowa State would be the furthest away, so I don't really see Iowa State or even like the Kansas teams joining. That could be a little strange, but I could totally see Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Baylor, and at least TCU. Those make sense to me. And the remaining of the Big 12 conference, it's not like the Big 10 trying to get Pac-12 members. For geography purposes, this makes sense. For revenue purposes, the Big 12 and Pac-12 do not have the same TV deals or money gainers that the Big 10 and SEC do, at least when it comes to football. But if you get two weaker conferences to merge and they're as geographically spread out as this, and Texas and California are very populated states, I could see that you could get a very large market. Now, the only question geographically would be how does West Virginia fit into this? That's the only thing to me that is kind of strange, but everything is strange with expansion. But if it's going to be about to be the Pac-20, if both of them merge, then you have the Pacific Conference, and West Virginia is in the Pacific Conference. To me, that's kind of funny. But really, I do think that this kind of does make sense. The Big 12 has to somehow keep itself alive. If they don't completely merge, they should form alliances with other conferences, or at least try to expand. I've mentioned before, you can target teams that have been good at football who are at the group of 5 level. I'm thinking Boise State, and you can target some American teams too. like maybe target Houston since they're in Texas. Also target Cincinnati, SMU, Boise State, Cincinnati, SMU, and Houston. That is 12 teams. 12 teams in the Big 12. You can expand even further. Maybe get a team like Memphis or something. But yeah, it's either expand or merge. The Big 12 cannot stay at 8 teams. That will not work for revenue purposes. For if they stay at 8 teams, I don't see why you'd even have a conference championship, because every team would be facing each other. You'd only have 7 conference games and 5 non-conference games, and I just don't see how that'll work. This conference is dying if they don't adapt, and by adapting I mean either merge or quickly expand to some better group of 5 teams that can have high market value and also draw in large TV audiences. That's the only way the Big 12 here can survive. And I think that the most geographically, or almost the most geographical way that could preserve some tradition would be the Big 12 following Colorado, since the SEC, I doubt the SEC will take in every Big 12 team, but it'd be following Colorado if you don't follow the SEC. And I don't know. I really don't have a huge opinion on this, but it's interesting. I wanted to report on it, and let me know in the comments below what you think about this potential Big 12 Pac-12 merger. Is this good for football, or should the Big 12 expand? By good for football, I don't mean just good for money. I mean good for football, because it brings in money and it's good for the schools financially does not mean this is good for the sport. I don't believe that Oklahoma and Texas going to the SEC is good for the sport, and I think in the end, just really, I look at how Texas has done these past few years, and I honestly think that Texas moving to the SEC might kill it. It might kill their football program, and I'm not joking when I say that. Texas moving to the SEC, because no matter what, you're going to be placed with LSU and A&M. They're going into the SEC. They'll likely be placed in A&M's division, and A&M is starting to out-recruit them. A&M's been the better program, I would say, this decade, and you're going to be abused by A&M in that conference. The SEC is going to further raid your in-state recruiting, and you're going to face tougher competition. So I've already talked about this in another video, but especially Texas moving to the SEC, it neither makes sense to me, and especially program-wise for Texas. But that just proves to you that it's all about money. But I just don't see how the SEC. Texas Tech, Oklahoma State. It doesn't sound like they're interested in the SEC. They feel betrayed, and they don't want to follow Texas and OU. So the next closest solution, I would say, would be the Pac-12, and I would say too that if you want to make everything geographically pleasing, and I mentioned geography because that's just what I prefer, maybe you put Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Baylor, and TCU in the Pac-12. You get Iowa State and Kansas in, Iowa State and Kansas in the Big Ten, and that leaves you, I believe, that just leaves you with, with Kansas. That just leaves you with Kansas State. Kansas State and West Virginia. And Kansas State, they're a good team, but they're not an AAU member, so the Big Ten's out. They could join the Pac-12, but then I think the Pac-12 would want to get another team to make it even teams. Pac-18, and then West Virginia, I'd say West Virginia should go to the American or ACC. Either one of those two. I don't see how West Virginia is going to join the Pac-12, but then again, it's all about money now, isn't it? So, to a certain degree, my talk and wanting to preserve some tradition is absolutely irrelevant. If you like this video, remember to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can get more of my videos when they are posted. And I check out the link in the video's description about the article that I read, Big 12 and Pac-12 merger, on Yahoo Sports by Brianna Dix. It is interesting. And I will also link down below an article from Longhorn's Wire about the Pac-16 and how Texas shaped that whole idea. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around.